What's up everyone? Welcome to another video. Welcome back to my channel. I have not been very active lately. I have been on vacation, so I wasn't able to upload any videos, but that'll change. I will update more frequently in 2020, so make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn that notification bell on so you will stay up to date with all the latest videos I'll post. Today, we're going to talk about contingency. What is a contingency? What kind of contingencies are there? And how does it affect the buyer and the seller in a transaction? Let's start with the definition of contingency. Contingency is a future event or circumstance which is possible but cannot be predicted with certainty. In a real estate contract, a contingency defines a condition or action that must be met in order for a real estate contract to be binding. The contingency becomes part of the binding contract when both parties, buyer and seller, agree to the terms and sign the contract. It is important to understand what you are getting into when a contingency is part of the real estate contract. You should understand what the contingency means and how it impacts your real estate transaction. Today, we're going to talk about 5 contingencies that could be in a sales contract. Financing contingency, inspection contingency, home sale contingency, appraisal contingency, and the kick-out clause, which is also a contingency in a real estate transaction. Let's start with the appraisal contingency. The appraisal contingency is there to protect the buyer and the lender and to ensure that the property is valued at a minimum specific amount. If the property does not appraise for the amount agreed on in the contract, the contract could either be terminated or renegotiated with buyer and seller. What that means is, if you are under contract and the contract price is $200,000, but the appraisal comes back at $190,000, the lender will only lend $190,000 to the buyer to purchase this property. The deal could still happen if the sellers and the buyers agree to renegotiate and meet at $190,000, or the buyer agrees to pay the difference between the appraised price and the contract price. If the contract will be terminated because buyer and seller won't come to an agreement, then in many cases, the buyer will be refunded the earnest money. Financing contingency. This contingency gives the buyer time to apply for or obtain a loan to purchase the property. This contingency provides important security for the buyer who could back out of the contract if the buyer could not obtain financing in a real estate sales contract. The financing contingency states a specific number of days the buyer has time to obtain financing. If the buyer cannot obtain financing in that time period, the buyer could back out of the sales contract and possibly will be refunded the earnest money. The buyer has till that date to cancel the contract or ask for an extension of the financing contingency. Otherwise, the buyer waives the financing contingency and is obligated to purchase the property even if the financing is not secured. Next is the inspection contingency, the inspection period, or the due diligence contingency, depending where you at. This contingency gives the buyer the right to have a home inspection done prior to closing. The buyer has a specific time frame in which the home inspection should be done. In the real estate sales contract, it will state how many days from the last signature on the contract the buyer has to do the home inspection. Usually it's between 5 and 10 days. So in those 5 to 10 days, the buyer should have the home inspection done. If the buyer could not get the home inspection done in those 5 to 10 days, the buyer could ask for an extension of the home inspection period, but that is up to the seller to agree on or not. If you missed your window to do the home inspection, you are still obligated to purchase the property. The next one is the home to sell contingency. This happens a lot when people already own a house but want to buy a new house, and in order to finance the new house, they have to sell their old house. Home to sell contingency happens quite a bit. People already own a home, but they want to buy a new home. They want to upgrade or downgrade. But in order to purchase that new house and close on a new house, they have to sell their old house. For the seller, this is a pretty risky thing, because if the seller does accept the contingency offer, the seller has to wait for the buyer to sell their house in order to close on the seller's house. This also could be time consuming for the seller, because it could push the closing date further out than regular financing purchase without any contingencies. So sellers might take a contingency offer, but most of the time the contingency offer is the weaker offer of the offers they have on a table. From the buyer perspective, I get a lot of questions about, can I purchase a home while I still have a home, or I have to sell my home? And yes, you can with that contingency. Contingency offer, like I said, might be weaker than a regular offer, but you could try and you could work with your agent and put an offer in with the contingency of the sale of your house. But make sure that you already have a plan to sell your house, put it on the market, and get it going before you even start putting an offer in or looking at other houses. Last one, the kick-out clause, is a contingency to protect the seller if the seller has an offer from a buyer with a house to sell contingency. The kick-out clause is a contingency added by the seller to provide a measure of protection against home sale contingencies. While the seller agrees to a home sale contingency, she or he can add a kick-out clause to the contract, which gives them the right to keep promoting and advertising their property while under contract. If a new potential buyer steps up and brings an offer due to continuous marketing of the property, the seller then gives the current buyer a certain amount of time to remove the home for sale contingency off the contract. Otherwise, the seller can terminate the contract and accept the new offer from the other buyer. It is very important to know exactly what a contingency is, and if you have a contingency in your real estate sales contract, and what the time frame is. Make sure you ask your real estate professional, if there is a contingency, what does the contingency mean? What do you have to do? This was my video about contingencies in a real estate sales contract. If you have any questions at all, make sure to give me a call at 660-624-2196 or text me. Comment below. If you like the video, make sure you hit that thumbs up button, and I'll see you in the next video. If you haven't watched any of my videos yet, click up here to see other real estate tips and tricks I already uploaded. I hope you enjoy. Thank you very much.